Yeah, Friday! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening. Thanks for making me part of your day. This is episode 238 of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast. Before we get started today, I got a few announcements. That 60% off discount for Weight Watchers is still going on right now. The description is the link is in the description of this podcast. So if you've been thinking, hey, I really think about wanting to join Weight Watchers, look, now's the time to do it. Who doesn't want to save 60%? Really, who doesn't want to save it, right? The one catch in saving 60% is you're committing to 10 months, okay? That is the idea. You're going to commit 10 months, and really, it's really good for you to make that kind of commitment, because how many people, look, if we look at the New Year's resolution people, New Year's is January 1st. A lot of the times, Quitter's Day happens before the end of the month of January. It's like 2 weeks in, right? And people are like, oh, what's Quitter's Day? Actually, it's a day. It's a thing. Quitter's Day is the day that all of the New Year's resolution people that made a New Year's resolution have quit on that New Year's resolution before the end of January, okay? Now, I think this year it was January 17th. Don't quote me on that, or it was 14th. I can't remember exactly, but it's somewhere in the month of January every year. And it doesn't matter. It's not specific to fitness. It's anybody who makes a New Year's resolution, period. Quitter's Day happens in the month of January. So if you think about it like this, I'm going to join, I'm going to save 60% off, and I'm going to do it for 10 months. I'm going to hold my results loosely and concentrate solely on habitual change, changing my behaviors every step of the way for the next 10 months. That's the only thing I'm concerned with. Changing my life habitually. If you concentrate on that, at the end of 10 months, you will certainly look back and find success. Okay? That's what it's about. It's about habitual change over long periods of time. So who doesn't want to save 60% for 10 months? And who doesn't want to change their habits in the process and make a life that's going to stick with you in the process of becoming a healthier version of yourself? Now, if you are looking for a workshop, let's say you join and you're looking for a workshop, someplace to spend your days, Coach Sophie F., 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday morning. It's a great place to be. There's great people there. I love those people, man. I never knew I'd meet those people. When I started in 2019, first of all, I never thought I'd be attending workshops virtually in 2019. I thought I would just show up to the studio and that's how my life would go, right? But all of a sudden, a pandemic comes, and a wonderful thing that comes from the pandemic is the ability to meet virtually with anybody across the world. I never would have known Coach Sophie if not for a pandemic. I would never know so many of these people that you don't know exist. And then all of a sudden you can't imagine your life without these people. So many people like that. I can think about, and I can picture in my mind so many people that I didn't know in January of 2019 that I know now, and I can't imagine my life without those people. I can't imagine it. Even though they could basically be eliminated by the elimination of the internet. And I would truly miss those people. But it's a great place to be. 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday morning. That's where I hang out. If you're looking to be where I am, that's where I'm going to be. Coach Sophie F. She's a great coach. If mornings aren't your thing and you just really need to have an evening workshop, she has an evening workshop on Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. She has an evening workshop on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And she also does like a community workshop, which is a little different, on 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, Eastern Standard Time. So if evening's your thing join the Tuesday or Wednesday. If morning's your thing like me, then join the Saturday morning, okay? One more announcement I want to make. As of this past weekend, I quit trying to post videos to Connect. If you are on Weight Watchers Connect and you catch my podcast every week, you also know that I do walk talks where I'm walking outside doing my exercise and I talk for 9-10 minutes about whatever comes to my mind. If that's something you enjoy, for whatever reason, I cannot post videos to Connect anymore. And from what I'm hearing, it's not just me. There's a bunch of people that can no longer post their videos to Connect. So I'm posting exclusively to Facebook, to TikTok, and to YouTube. If you use any of those applications, find me there, Ranting Weight Watcher. And then if you subscribe on YouTube, follow me on TikTok, and even if you have to friend request me on Facebook to see it. Send me a friend request, I'll approve it, and you'll be able to see my walk talks in any one of those places, okay? I will post an image because I am allowed to post a picture. So I'll post a picture saying, something like the walk talk for this date has been posted, the link below in the comments. And you'll see a YouTube link there, and you'll be able to click the YouTube link. It'll take you right to YouTube app where you can watch the walk talk. That's how it's going to go from now on. I'm no longer going to fight with it. Listen, I know when I'm beat, right? And now that I'm finding out that it's other people too, it's not just me, who am I to continue fighting? So if you want to look for my walk talks, there you got 3 platforms in which to find those walk talks. So without any more being said about that, let's get into this! Journey update. So my weigh-in this week was June 21st, 2025. I stepped on the scale and I weighed in at 224.2 pounds. That is a gain of half a pound. Okay? So total pounds remaining to get to my 200-pound loss goal is 28.6 pounds. My work stats go from June 15th, 2025 to June 21st, 2025. In this time, 80,556 steps taken. This is an average steps per day of 11,508 steps. A total of 34.6 miles was walked. That's an average mileage per day of 4.9 miles per day. And so no changes being made. We are on to the next week. So I want to start today by talking a little bit about my personality. There's many people who know me a little more personally than others, so you already know this about me. But for the people who don't, I have a personality that, there's people that can say, I have a type A personality or a type. I don't know that I fit into any one of those types, okay? Because the only way I could describe my personality is that it is adaptive. Now, what does that mean, Don? If you put me in a room full of people who are in misery or in depression, or everybody has a bad attitude, I will become the one person with the positive attitude. Just the same. If you stick me in a room full of everybody is overly joyous and go lucky and all of this stuff, I will become the one pessimist. It's how I've always been. I literally don't even choose this. It just happens. It's almost like my mind sees what I'm surrounded by and becomes the antithesis of that. Okay? I am against the grain through and through. All right? I don't know how else to say it. I am literally fight the power up here, and my body, my personality just adapts, whatever it is. I guess that's why in this world that I live in, this world I could say is obsessed with results. We are so obsessed with the results that literally we have created ways to lose weight where we are literally manufacturing the result so that no life changes need to be made. The habits don't need to be changing, nothing. We go get surgery, we modify our bodies, we take drugs to modify our appetites. We literally do anything possible to create a result, but not change who we are. We want to change a result without changing who we are. That's the kind of world we live in. And because we're in a world where it's so overwhelmingly like that, I am one of the few who has become obsessed with changing who I am rather than changing nothing and manufacturing a result. I feel like I'm one of very few people that is actually after changing who I am as a person rather than creating the result in any way, shape, or form. But really, if we think about it, I try to think about this beforehand and try to come up with like a list. I ask myself, what does it really take to succeed? And how could I be broad with this? So literally, it'll apply to anybody. That this message goes out to anyone. It's not just to Weight Watcher people. This message can be applied in and it doesn't even have to be applied in fitness. It could be applied in business. It can be applied in anything. Anything you wish to do, anything you dream to do, these principles can be applied that way so that you can succeed in that. So 3 things are necessary to achieve success in anything: knowledge, wisdom, faith. Those 3 things are not only are they necessary, but they will almost guarantee your success in whatever you're trying to do. Now, will the success come when you desire it? No. It'll come when it's ready to come. But knowledge, wisdom, faith. Those 3 things. Now, there are 3 kinds of knowledge. There's given knowledge, there's obtained knowledge, and there's learned knowledge. Now, when we start our weight loss journey, whatever the program we're starting, whatever it is, there is some knowledge you're given, right? So you're going to use Weight Watchers as an example because Weight Watchers is what I joined. We go in there on that studio or however, think about your day one, right? Think about it right now, how that was like. On day one, you filled out a bunch of paperwork, did what you needed to do to sign up, and then you sat in a meeting. And this meeting, they gave you some knowledge of what it would take. And this knowledge was the core principles of the program you chose. In this case, I'm using Weight Watchers. So, what do they tell you on day one? They tell you make healthy choices. They tell you stay within your point budget. And that could easily be calories, macros too. So stay within your points, calories, macros. It's all the same thing. And then they tell you to track, weigh and measure, and move. They tell you, they don't condemn you for not doing it. As a matter of fact, there's plenty of people that start on day one And they actually believe in their minds that tracking is unnecessary. They know what they're doing. That weighing and measuring is unnecessary. They know what they're doing. And they have also decided they can't move. I was one of those people who decided I couldn't move. That just gives you an example. But they make these decisions without understanding the ramifications that literally there are consequences to every decision you make, right? So they decide ahead of time, I don't need to track. I don't need to weigh and measure. Meanwhile, if they didn't need to track, if they didn't need to weigh and measure, why would they need the program, period? If you could live life a certain way, you wouldn't need program. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? So but that goes right over their head, right? But this is the knowledge you're given, the core principles. Make healthy choices. Stay within your points, calories, macros. Track, weigh and measure, and move. People who do these things find success. That's what they tell you. They don't say you better do this. They don't say you're a bad person if you don't do this. They just say people who do this find success. The next type of knowledge is obtained knowledge. Now, there are two different ways you obtain knowledge. You obtain knowledge by watching other people or asking what they're doing. Like, so you watch their methods or you ask them about their methods. Why do you do this the way you do it? You find interest in what they're doing. It's part of the reason you're listening to me right now. You find interest in how I handle things and how I think about things. I tell you guys so often that I come here to destroy your way of thinking because most of the battle is getting you out of your own way. So you're watching someone else, you're asking questions to someone else about how they handle things. That's one way of obtaining knowledge. Another way of obtaining knowledge is to be reading, whether it's an article, whether it's a book, you're watching a documentary, you're listening to podcasts, all of these things, all having to do with your subject matter, whether that's fitness, whether that's whatever your interest may be. Some people might want to be, this is why I say these principles obtain to anything, because literally if you read articles from people who have made tons of money, do you not think you would learn something? If you read books about people who were real estate gurus, do you not think you would catch something if you really wanted to be a real estate agent? Do you not think that you would learn something about business if you listened to business podcasts? Podcasts with millionaires, multi-millionaires, and some of them billionaires. They are talking about how they created their wealth. Do you not think you would, so knowledge, wisdom, faith, all of these things apply to literally anything you're doing. That's just another example. So that's the two. The obtained knowledge you get from asking people and watching people, and the obtained knowledge you get from reading articles, reading books, watching documentaries, listening to podcasts, whatever it is. Diving in deep in the subject matter you're after. This is what obtaining knowledge looks like. The last way of receiving knowledge is learning. Now, what does that mean? What is learning? Is the last type of knowledge being learned knowledge? What does that mean? It means what you learn from trial and error. You're never going to be perfect in this. And one way of learning is learning from other people's successes. And this is pretty easy, right? You see someone you perceive as successful, and when you're sitting there asking them all these questions, like, from the knowledge section here, and they tell you what they did, And you're saying, oh, that makes sense. And this person lost 200 pounds. Why wouldn't that work for me? So you start to introduce their theories into your life. Another way of learning is going to be learning from your own failure. This one's a hard pill to swallow because nobody likes to fail, right? Everybody thinks that failure is the worst possible thing that can happen. They don't see failure is just the teacher that got a bad rap, right? The one that has the no-nonsense attitude that basically is telling you like it is, that no one likes to hear that knowledge, right? That's what failure is. It's like that one family member that tells you like it is that no one really likes to have around. That's what learning from your own failure feels like. The key to learning from your own failure is to stop seeing it as an end. When you stop seeing failure as the end, it can't have the power over you that it has. It can't cause the fear that it causes. Because if it's just the beginning, if your failure point is the new beginning, what's the big deal? But it's not. It's so much work to get someone to see it that way, right? Now, the last way of learning is probably the most difficult way. I went over so far learning from your own failure and learning from other people's success. The final way of learning is learning from other people's failure. This is the most difficult thing to do. And it's all because of your own ego. You're going to see somebody has done something, and rather than say, I shouldn't do that, you're going to say, this won't happen to me because. And somehow in your mind, you will just work it out that this won't apply to you. It just goes to show you, like, look, I don't mean to get political, but when you look at the history of communism, and you go through, every time communism started somewhere, it was because they thought they could do it better than the previous people that failed. You could look at that all through history. I'm not here to get political. I don't really give a crap. But what I'm telling you is, if you look at the history of something, I watch trends. I watch how things go through the flow of time, right? And what I could see here, history tells me that something got reintroduced over and over and over hundreds and hundreds of years. And each time it started with one leader who thought they can do it different than the other guy. This is what the definition of what I'm saying is. It's the perfect example. The example of unable to get away from your own ego long enough to say, hey, maybe this way just doesn't work. But instead you allow yourself to be, it will be different for you because. And just add whatever you need to add to the end of that. That's the way it works. So that's why it's the most difficult one. Because we inject ourselves into it and we think only about how it will be different for us than it was for them. So the next one is wisdom. Now there are 3 methods of obtaining wisdom. Received wisdom, earned wisdom. 2 methods. I apologize. Received wisdom and earned wisdom. Now, an example of received wisdom is that you're observing the qualities of people you deem that, so people that have qualities that you wish to obtain, you're observing them and you're trying to obtain those qualities the way they did it. That is an example of received wisdom. Another example of received wisdom is listening to the advice of those same people, regardless of the message. So wisdom comes in that, and that ties directly in with that learning from other people's failures, right? That's wisdom. When you can actually when you can achieve learning from someone else's failure and not inject yourself and just avoid a situation entirely because you trust this person so much that you're not even willing to try that method because of what it did to this person, right? And so you figure if they learned their lesson, you should learn from their lesson too. That is listening to the advice, regardless of whether you like the message or not. The other is going to be earned wisdom. And one way of earning wisdom is probably one of the most hardest, and it's achieving the understanding that whoever you think you need to be and whoever you actually need to be to create success are two very different people. And you guys know the perfect example of this: the all or nothing mentality, the perfectionist mentality. Who you think you need to be. There's not a single person on this planet who would stand up on a podium and declare he or she is perfect. You would openly say, I am not a perfect man. I am not a perfect woman. You would openly say that without hesitating. And yet, when it comes to health and weight loss, you actually believe perfection is necessary. So that is the perfect example of understanding who you think you need to be and who you actually need to be in order to create success are two different people. The next one is going to be understanding that failure is the teacher that brings success. People don't like that. People think they can achieve success without ever failing. And I will tell you that if you never actually fail, you never actually pushed yourself beyond anything. And you will never achieve your true potential of whatever it is you're supposed to do without actually creating failure. The last one is understanding that no one goes from 0 to 100. Nobody goes from couch potato to powerlifting. Nobody does that. Nobody goes from couch potato to marathon runner. You have to do it in steps. Nobody goes from not worrying about anything about what they eat to completely changing their life and being something extreme. Nobody does that successfully and sustainably. The understanding that you have to do things in baby steps so that not only does the behavior get learned, the behavior stays. That is the last example of wisdom. There's one thing I could say here. Knowledge versus wisdom. Understanding the difference. So knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The last thing here is faith. So the first thing you have to have faith when you start off here is you have to have faith in the process. People told you there is a way. You've chosen this program, and there is a way to achieve success in this program. And this is the process. And you have to have faith in that process long enough to create the success you're trying to create. The other thing is faith in yourself. Faith in yourself, regardless of the circumstances that tell you otherwise. Regardless of whatever limitations you think you have. Faith in yourself beyond all rational thinking. Blind faith in yourself. Belief that you can do things above and beyond anything you thought possible. That is the other example of faith. There is a story I want to tell you. And this story is about a woman. And this woman essentially spent 12 years of her life in isolation. She spent 12 years of her life in isolation because of a chronic illness. She wasted every penny she earned going to doctors, trying to find a way, trying to find a cure, and had nothing to show for it. How many people would quit? How soon would you quit? Would you spend 12 years and get nowhere? 12 years being sick, 12 years being in pain. How quickly would you quit? How quickly would you say, oh, life's not worth living. I'm just going to wait to die. Why bother fighting it? But she spent 12 years. She had nothing to show for it, except for the fact that she was broke. Nothing to show for it. And then she had some really big circumstances against her. Now you think you'd like to believe that someone like this, a story like this, would mean that there is a overwhelming amount of support for this person. You would think that, right? You would hope that someone who is suffering for 12 years of their life would have some kind of support, some kind of anything, anybody who can help them make life just a little bit easier. Instead, all of those people that should have been supporting basically shamed her existence. They contributed to her isolation. And the state that she lived in governed her existence. That because of her existence, because of her condition, she was deemed unclean. She was deemed dirty. And society as a whole was to stay away from her, although they would be deemed unclean, dirty. All of this contributed to her isolation. In spite of her circumstance, she never lost hope. Never lost hope that eventually she would figure out a way to find a cure, a way to help herself become healthy. She never lost hope. One day she hears people in the street talking. And they're talking about a man by the name of Jesus of Nazareth. And she hears these people talk about miracles. She's hearing about the lame walking. She's hearing about the blind seeing. She's hearing about the dead rising again. She's hearing all these stories. And in this moment, this man, Jesus, becomes her last best hope. And she tells herself, if this man can't heal me, nobody else can. Nobody. This is the end. She has blind faith. She just keeps telling herself, he's the only one that can heal me. And she's hearing the stories. I mean, lame walking, blind seeing, dead rising. Why not me, right? Why not me? In spite of all this, her circumstance tells her she can't speak to him because she's unclean. It's against the law. There are laws governing that she stay away from Jesus. Laws. Because if she gets too close, she'll make him unclean. And to do anything would be breaking the law of the land. To do anything against those circumstances would be breaking the laws of the land. She knows. She knows in her knower that Jesus is the answer. Even though those circumstances exist. Even though the fact that she would even attempt this is breaking laws. She knows in her knower that Jesus is the answer. She has zero doubt. So what does she think? How many of you would have quit in this session? Like, look, I can't even get near him. The law, I'll be breaking the law. How many people would know you'd be breaking the law and just not even attempt this? Right? How many? But still, she's thinking. Still, she's doing. The mind, the gears are turning to figure out how she's going to get her miracle. Because there's no doubt in her mind she's going to get her miracle. So she tells herself, I don't need to speak to him. I don't need him to bless me. I don't need him to touch me. All I need is to get close enough to touch his robe. If I can just do that, if I could just get close enough, even though knowing that even getting close to him is breaking laws, if I could just get close enough to touch his robe, I will be healed. She was willing, essentially, to risk it all. Risk it all to have the result she desired. So the day comes, and the crowd is enormous. It's enormous. But she crawls her way toward him. She crawls and she crawls and she crawls, and she works so carefully toward him, and she just gets there and just touches the rope. And when she does this, Jesus feels power leave his body. And immediately he says, "Who touched me?" And his disciples are looking at him like, "You see this crowd, bro? What do you mean, who touched you? Are you kidding me right now?" That's what they say to him. He goes, No. I felt power. Somebody touched me in faith. I felt power leave my body. So right away, the crowd is kind of backing away, and this woman, she knows she's healed. She can feel it. And she's overly joyous, but at the same time, she's terrified because she knows that she received her healing, but she broke the law to do it. And he knows I broke the law. She's terrified. She could have hid what she did, but instead she confessed. She told Jesus the whole thing. She told Jesus her whole story. She told Jesus how she said to herself, all I need to do is touch his robe, even though I'll be breaking the law to do it, but I know it'll heal me. And Jesus looked at her and said, daughter, your faith has healed you. He gave her her life back in that moment. He didn't condemn her like the rest of the world would have. He called her daughter and gave her her dignity back, gave her respect, gave her the blessing to go and live a whole and healthy life because her faith has made her whole. You know, her story is a perfect example of the 97-3 mentality that I always talk about. I tell you guys, if you do 97% of the work with 100% of your effort, you could stand in faith that Jesus will show up and help you with the 3%. This is a perfect example. She did everything on her own. She didn't ask Jesus for anything. She just said, I need to get to him and touch his robe. She did 97% of the work. She did it with 100% effort to get through that entire crowd, to get close enough to touch the robe. And Jesus met her with the other 3%. And he said, daughter, your faith has made you whole. She broke the law for her healing. How many of you won't even track your food? How many of you won't weigh and measure your food? You're telling yourselves lies that you're saying you don't need this. You don't need to weigh and measure. You know what it looks like. You don't need to track your food. You know what you eat. You know you make good choices. You know how to live this life. She broke the law for her healing, and you won't even track your food. You won't even stick it on a scale. You won't even put it in a measuring cup. What does it say about us? What does it say about us when we have this kind of mentality? This woman broke the law for her healing, and you won't even track your food, weigh and measure your food. You won't get out and move. You'll say, I'll do anything so long as it's not uncomfortable. You will believe delusions that your life can be lived with the things you're addicted to. Addicted to. You'll think that you could achieve a healthy life and keep your addictions. Live with them. And never actually have to let them go. She stepped forward to take her life back in defiance of the law of the land. She stood against the entire society around her who has ashamed her entire life. They helped her stay in isolation her entire life. They listened to people in authority and said, okay, well, if they told you you're unclean, I believe it. She stood in defiance of all of that to achieve her healing, to become whole again. And we won't even track our food. We won't even weigh and measure our food. We won't even get out and take a few steps outside and sweat a little. We won't even give up sugar. We act like sugar is a necessary part of life. How many of you remain paralyzed by the decision to do something because you're afraid it's not going to work out? How many of you would have looked at her circumstance and just sat in your room by yourself for the rest of your life? A poor, miserable existence. How many of you? Because the law said you can't get close to Jesus. You know, there's a saying, when the pain from not changing becomes greater than the pain to change, that's when real change is possible. And that's what it is for everybody. Nothing changes unless you change. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.